Have you seen me playing 25 tables against the best of the world while streaming and still making 6 figures every single year? Of course, I'm doing something that helps me making faster and better decisions. There's one simple yet very powerful strategy that will A, make you a ton of money, and B, save you a ton of money for critical river decisions when it comes to hero calling or hero folding. And I call this the funnel strategy. And all you need to do is to focus on one thing only. I know you might think, but Ben, there are millions of variables that we need to consider to make good river decisions. I get you, but hear me out. And you can apply this to 1 cent tournaments, $25,000 tournaments, no matter if you play live or you play online. And as illustration, I will use 3 different spots that I recently had in big tournaments in very critical situations. All of them were around money bubbles or on the final table. Here, in this spot, I folded a full house on the river. Here I folded 2 pair, and here I hero called 2 pair, risking my top 5 stack close to a $10,000 money bubble. You're wondering, so what is it that we should focus on? And I understand that in order to make a good decision, we need to focus on the bluffs and value hands our opponent can potentially have. But instead of overcomplicating, I only want you to focus on one thing only, and that will do most of the job. And to do so, we forget about what GTO taught you. Forget about what a solver taught you. Forget about your balancing. When it comes to these spots, it is a battle between 2 humans, and we tend to do what we think is best. And this is very often not following GTO. And the funnel strategy works as the following. You think of the hands your opponent can have from preflop to that very river decision. And the closer you get to the river, the tighter the range, the fewer hands are left, like a funnel. But there's one critical thing you need to consider. And all I want you to focus on are the hands that your opponent will play 90% or more of the time. The pocket 3s hand is a beautiful example because we can see how this concept works at the real poker tables. And I'm not saying you don't need theory at all. Yes, you need theory, but more importantly, preflop. So let's dive into the hand and I'll show you how that works at the real poker tables. So let's fast forward to the river. A lot of you guys would be, oh, he could have king queen, he could have king queen jack, he could bluff 8-9, he could bluff 10-9, turning hands into a bluff. That's bullshit. All you're doing is focus on a very likely outcome that just confuses you. Then you end up guessing and you lose a lot of money. What I do instead is first, let's have a look at pre-flop and the potential hands he can come to the river with, and I only focus on the hands, the value hands he will play exactly the way the hand played out. So let's start with pocket queens. It's a final table. 2 big stacks are playing against each other. He can very likely, in fact, in these ICM scenario, he should be flatting a lot of pocket queens here. In fact, more than 80-90% of the times. So he can definitely have pocket queens here, and betting the flop, slow playing, check calling, going for the check raise. Yes, can totally get to the row with all the pocket queens. Pocket 8s, exactly the same. So pocket queens, pocket 8s, pocket 10s, flats as well. Similar to his pocket queens, it's an okay flop. He takes a small step to protect his hand, to fold out the ace jacks, to fold out potential hands that have equity here on the button. Then I bet very small on the turn. He could put me on pocket 9s or an ace 8 suited, so he might still be ahead, so he calls it and then gets on the river. Pocket queens, pocket 8s, pocket 10s. Now ace queens suited, I think very often would check the flop because it's a hand where the pre-flop regresser can still have aces and kings. We can have pocket 3s, pocket 8s. So ace queen actually wants to pot control. Again, it's a heavy ICM situation. Your top pair, top kicker isn't as strong as you might think. It makes more sense to bet pocket 10s because once everyone calls or once you face a raise, the hand is done. But with ace queen, the bigger the pot gets, the more difficult it becomes. Now, that's why I would say ace queen, yeah, sometimes bets, sometimes checks. I would ignore it because, as I said, we focus on what he's very likely doing with all the better hands, pocket queens, pocket eights, all the hands that have me beat. I wouldn't even put him on queen 10 because I think also queen 10 suited either 3-bets pre or checks the flop. So he gets to the river with a random queen 10 suited only 5% of the time. And that's the problem. You guys focus on the but Ben, he could have this, he could have that. Focus on what he really is going to have. Funnel strategy from pre-flop to the river, but you only focus on the 90, 95, 85% of the times what he's going to do with those hands that have you beat. Is he going to have pocket threes? No, of course not, right? He can't have pocket threes. But let's say in case he could have it, he wouldn't flat it pre-flop, so we can also remove that. Maybe 3% of the times. Don't focus on these very rare instances. What about Jack 9 and clubs? Well, again, he would very likely not flat this in a position or very likely 3-bet. So I'm not saying he will absolutely never have it. Maybe 2%, 7% of the time. But for my river decision, it does not. It doesn't play an important role. King queen off, again 3-bets. Ace queen off, also very often 3-bets pre-flop as a bluff. But again, if he decides to call, would very often check. But you see already that ace queen, some of the times 3-bets pre, some of the time checks, and then some of the time does not check raise on the river anymore. So once you have ace queen, you put ace queen in the funnel, a lot of the combos will leave the funnel because they 3-bet pre-flop. Then you go to the next decision point. Ace queen leaves then already on the flop very often because it would check and not bet because you want a pot control. And once you get to the river, the few combinations, maybe you have 30% of the ace queen combinations left that are still in the funnel, would not check raise. So maybe he has ace queen 10% of the time, and we can apply the same for king queen. So it's very, very rare. So the raise here that I'm facing is like 95% pocket eights, 95% pocket queens, 95% pocket tens, and maybe 2, 3, 4, 5% ace queen or a jack 9 in clubs. Bluffs. What bluffs can you really have? It's very important to understand this is a spot where it's very hard to have any kind of natural bluffs. Maybe ace 10 in clubs would be a hand like this, but also again would continue bluffing the turn. You have a flush draw. Why would he start checking? Has fold equity against an 8, against pocket 9s, etc. So this is how we want to approach it. And you see here that the value hands that I'm facing are going to be in his line 90-95% of the time, and the bluffs or value hands I potentially beat are only going to be 5, 10, 7% of the time in his range the way the hand played out. And all I'm doing here is focusing on what is the most likely outcome. And you really have to see it as a funnel. And if you continue arguing, reasoning for your own gameplay and river decision making progress, but he could have this, but he could have that, scratch it, screw it. If this guy shows up here with jack 9 and clubs, yeah, it can happen. I look like an idiot, but I don't care about this. So I don't focus on the result. I focus on what is the most likely hands he's gonna have, and applying the funnel strategy and really approaching it every single time you get to the river. And yes, it takes some practice, but the most important is the theory part pre-flop, not necessarily post-flop, because for post-flop it just requires thinking things through. And the more often you do it the way I do it, the easier it will get to you. Just think for yourself how often you're gonna find those fancy GTO bluffs. 2%, 7% of the time. So forget about it. Focus on what is the most likely outcome. Let's do the same for another final table. We're down to 5 players, 3 short stack. Arthur and me are the bigger stacks. In fact, he is significantly shorter than me still, so I have a really good big stack here. And I check the flop, he overbets the turn, and then jams his 40 big blinds into 20 big blind pot. What is the same principle here? A lot of you guys would probably argue again, wow, he could have 6-5, he could have 9-6, we're top of our range. And you would again use all these 3%, 7% likelihoods to make a justification to throw 40 big blinds away. Obviously, we're kind of top of the range, right, with the 2 pair, but he also chooses a line that I think is pretty bad. Now, yeah, he could have 9-6, he could have 6-5, but he needs to have it so often that it's unrealistic. He might be doing this 5% of the time, 7% of the time. But let's focus again on the hands that have us beat, that he's gonna play exactly like this. 10-9, boom, 16 combinations that you run into. Then king 10, yeah, makes sense, right? I would say is a very nice hand, double gutter, over betting the turn, sucks to check call. You go big, instant fold equity against something like 8-7 suited, 8-5 suited, 8-6 suited, King 8 suited that checks back the flop. Even like 10-8, 9-8 suited would probably have to fold against this overbet. So makes a lot of sense. Yeah, King 10, another 16 combinations. Then obviously pocket 8s, pocket 7s, ace jack. And I think ace jack is the thinnest value bet he will find on the river. All of these. It's like 16-16, another, depending on the blockers here, 8-9 combinations per 2 pair, per set. So yeah, let's just roughly approximately guess 50 to 60 combinations that he will play exactly like this. And that's the process. And you might think, oh, but it's still hard for me to grasp. But if you do this over and over and over again, you will start seeing it way quicker. It allows you to play more tables. I'm not thinking about what blockers do I have and what I unblock and block and whatnot. No, focus on what your opponent is very likely doing. And by doing so, you remove all these like, oh, he could have 9-6, he could have like 10-5 suited and like gutters and blockers, all this bullshit. Yeah, it could happen 2% of the time, could happen 3% of the times. But at the end of the day, 90-95% of the time, he's going to have those straights, he's going to have those 2 pairs. And this is what I want you to focus on. This funnel strategy paired with focusing on the 90% plus likelihood hands, the way the hand played that he's going to have, it's going to help you to make so much better river decisions. He could potentially turn his queen 9 into a bluff, king queen. You might find reasons for him to find these bluffs, but I would find reasons for him to check the queen 10 because we're still going to have slow played, or sorry, pot controlled, a jack 5 suited, jack 2 suited. We raise all these hands here with chip leader. We still want to pot control, so we check back some weak jack X. We check back 8x in spades that calls a turn bet. So if he hits his queen on the river, he has all reasons to check because he has so much showdown value, and then it goes check check and he wins the pot, right? So I have good reasons. Again, it might happen sometimes where he says, you know what, I'm going to pull the trigger here with queen 10 and get this motherfucker off his whatever ace-x hand that he checked back the flop with. So this is how you have to see it. That we can argue about it, but I think we both agree that a queen 10 might only happen 20, 30, 40% of the time. And this is not enough. This is not enough paired with the very unlikely scenario that he's doing this with 9-6, 6-5. He could potentially, but what means potentially? And that leads to very poor river decision making because you're, oh, potentially, which in reality is probably only going to happen 7 or 50% of the time versus all those value hands that he is going to have 90% of the time. And if you would put this in a solver or an equilab and you say, all right, yeah, he has those value hands 90% of the times, here, boom, 60 value combos against potential, in reality, only 10, 15 bluff combos, yeah, you're losing money long term. But you can scrap all these thinking about these very unlikely hands by just focusing on the hands that really make sense. Just think for yourself, how would you approach this spot, right? It's just so easy to be greedy with 10-9 and king 10 and rip it in and try, hope that a set hero calls you. By the way, I find his play very bad because it's very easy to overfold this spot. And you see, if I start folding 2 pair here, that's pretty bad. That's a very bad play to make with a straight, in my opinion. So I folded, he had king 10, and that helped me also here to maintain my good position and then also reach heads up. Next hand. So this is a money bubble, very close to the money bubble. We're in 4th position, 23 left, 15 paid. So we're basically having a top 5 stack. We're playing against the chip leader. The action goes open raise call, big blind calls, and we bet the flop, check the turn, river, we make 2 pair. And now in this spot, you might think, isn't it very similar, right? We face a massive overbet jam or check raise all in. It's a bit of a different river action, but again, same situation. We have a bluff catcher with 2 pair and now he jams all in. Now this is a little bit different, but let's think about the value hands, right? We bet the flop, pocket 5s, pocket 3s. He plays against 2 opponents, very draw heavy. Don't think he's ever gonna have ace 3, ace pocket 3s or pocket 5s. Same for pocket 8s, right? 2 players involved, there are going to be a lot of flush draws. Makes no sense. 6-7. 6-7 makes a lot of sense because you don't want to raise your 6-7 and then I go over the top with pocket 5s or pocket 8s, or the big blind has a 2 pair. There are a lot of hands that big blind and button can have that are very nutted that go over the top. So with 6-7, you're more inclined to just, you know, check call. Then you make your straight, you check again on the turn. So I would say, yeah, for sure. he's gonna have 6-7. But the thing is, it's only 4 combinations because he's not opening the offsuited combos. Now, in contrast to this spot, if he has something like pocket 6s, pocket 7s, 6-5 suited, 7-5 suited, he's also the chip leader, so he's gonna be opening really wide. He's gonna have 9-7 suited, 9-6 suited, also overcard, gutter, just check calls to flop, and then wants to continue playing from the turn. So he gets to the river with a shitload of potential bluffs. And I played a hand earlier against him where he bluffed me with 5 high, 6 high, or 7, whatever it was, with an overbet all-in on the river as well, on a very straighty board. So yes, this opponent is capable of doing so. This is the most important question you have to answer, because even if someone could have potentially all these bluffs, is he capable of doing so? Against many other opponents, I would just fold, because yeah, he could have a potential 7-5 suited or 9-6 suited and turns it into bluff, blocking my 2 pairs. I would still not call. This is a very important question you have to answer. Now, knowing that this guy is capable of doing so, now let's talk about all the potential bluffs he can have. So let's just assume 20 value combinations. 8-7 suited, 6-5 suited, 9-7 suited, pocket 6s, pocket 7s, something like 10-8 suited. So basically blocking my river at ace-8, blocking my river at ace-9. All these kind of like 8x, 9x, with a 6, with a 7, even something like king 9 of hearts is a very good bluff jam on the river. That's a lot of combos. However, you need to be disciplined because he's not wrapping that many value combos as well. So you see that all of these potential bluffs, it makes a lot of sense. King 9 of hearts, of course, you don't want to raise and get blown off your equity. 9-7 suited, if he has 9-7 in clubs, you really want to see a turn. Some of them, like a 9-6 of spades, might check raise or bet, yeah, I get it. But again, he's out of position playing against 2 opponents, so he should be checking a lot. So now getting to the river, it makes a lot of sense with a lot of these hands the way he played it. Check, call, flop, check, check, turn, and now he sits there on the river, right? There's no point in betting. He still has enough showdown value, checks his 9-7, and then I bet big, and he realizes, well, he bets into 2 people. I very likely don't have the best hand anymore. Then the same for 7-5 suited, 8-7 suited, should also just check call the flop. He could also have like king 8 suited, queen 8 suited, jack 8 suited, 10-8 suited, all these kind of hands. 9-8 suited is not raising. I don't think he's raising ace 3, ace 5 because you're really wrapping ace 8 or ace 9 here. Ace 9 also makes sense to check from our perspective on the turn because it's a pretty dangerous board here. Just a top pair, we really want to pot control and not blow up the pot unnecessarily. So in this spot, you see now for the bluffs that they're very little value, but the bluffs, all the potential bluffs he can have, really played this way. And that's the kind of process that you want to focus on over and over again. At the end of the day, you play against humans. Do you think this fucker is playing GTO on the spot? No, of course not. I ended up calling. He had 9, I think he had 8-7 off even, which is way too loose. So he probably has even more bluff combos than I actually anticipated. But that happens very often. You more often play against players that play their own style that might still be profitable, that is far away from GTO. That happens way more often. And if you only focus on GTO and balancing, you're not going to be able to make those exploitative hero calls or exploitative hero folds. I don't think I need to tell anyone that pocket 3s is a theory GTO call. And probably the solver also wants me to hero call some 2 pairs. And also here, maybe with ICM and bar, that I should be bet folding some 2 pairs on the river. But in this spot, I would actually hero call a lot because of that reason. You might wonder, but Ben, how can I do it? Well, practice. Practice this. It's not like from today to tomorrow that you're going to be magically a crusher when it comes to hero calling or hero folding. But a lot of you guys keep doing something over and over again, and it's not giving you the progress because you focus on the wrong things. Just because you spend a lot of time learning, studying, and practicing poker doesn't make you necessarily better because you focus on the wrong things. We at Raise Your Edge, we keep things simple. We want to teach you a realistic approach to the game. And if you are looking for more guidance and structure, then check out my free course. This is exactly how I approach it to the game, and this will help you to become much better in a much shorter period of time. So check it out. It's a free tournament course. It's designed to help you winning at micro stakes, low stakes, and even up to mid stakes. It's a lot more advanced than I initially wanted it to do. Comes also with a lot of bonus videos. So it was actually a longer video than I anticipated, but this is how I do it. And this is also how I managed to play 20-25 tables, because if you do it, you quickly realize, wait, he cannot have enough bluffs here, fold. Well, he's gonna have way too many bluffs here, hero call. And then you can just rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. Sometimes I face extremely top players on high stakes where I know they follow a very theoretical approach. And then I also argue with, okay, blockers, GTO, but that's only 3, 4, 5, 6% of the times. 90% of the times, this is how you want to do it. And again, that's already most of the situations. So let me know if you have any other questions or concerns, problems in the comments about river decisions, spots you struggle. Might put it in one of the next videos you've seen lately. We've been doing more of these educational videos, tips and tricks and strategies. We also have a free Discord that you can join. Our coaches and our community is very active there, even in the public ones that are for free. Do not miss out. There are a lot of opportunities to get better without spending a single penny. And I'll see you guys in the next video.